If you are sitting down for a serious chess session on Lichess, setting up the right environment, time controls, and mindset makes all the difference. Choosing the right time control. For a truly serious game where you want deep calculation rather than reflex moves, steer clear of bullet and fast blitz. Instead, focus on rapid, 10+0 or 15+10, the sweet spot for online competitive play. 15+10, 15 minutes with a 10-second increment, gives you enough breathing room to actually think through complex middle games and end games without committing to a multi-hour block. Classical. If you want true over-the-board style seriousness, look for 30+0 or longer, or check out community groups like the Lichess 4545 League or Lone Wolf, which host structured, long-form classical team and individual matches. Maximizing focus. Zen mode. Lichess has a built-in Zen mode. Toggle it in your game preferences or hit the shortcut during a match. It hides your opponent's chat, rating changes, and distracting UI elements so you can tunnel vision entirely on the board. Decline rematches. When playing seriously, avoid auto-rematching the same opponent out of tilt or frustration. Take a 2-minute break between games to clear your head. Post-game analysis. The hallmark of serious improvement is what you do after the clock stops. Zero error review. Run the local stockfish analysis on Lichess immediately after your game, but try to find the critical mistakes on your own first before turning on the engine lines. Study creation. Use the Lichess Studies feature to save your serious games, annotate your blunders, and build a personalized repository of your own tactical oversights and brilliancies. In Chess 960, Fischer Random Chess, position 585 features the following back rank arrangement for white, from files A through H, QRN BBKRN. Queen, A1, Rook, B1, Knight, C1, Bishop, D1, Bishop, E1, King, F1, Rook, G1, Knight, H1. Black mirrors this arrangement identically on the 8th rank, QRN BBKRN. classic twitch. It will throw a fit, flash red warnings about your bitrate, and act like the whole broadcast is actively melting down, only to quietly stitch the footage together into a VOD anyway. At least the recording survived the chaos. How did the session go otherwise once you actually got rolling? Sounds like the ultimate setup. Let the stream roll, keep the board open, and settle in for a long session of tactical calculation and world domination. Whether you're grinding out games against the bots or queuing up for another round of global conquest, enjoy the run. In position 585, QRNBBKRN, where your king sits snugly on f1 sandwiched between the bishops and the g-rook, pushing an early h3 is actually a surprisingly practical way to handle things. Because the setup packs your pieces tight toward the center and kingside, that h-pawn poke serves a couple of distinct purposes. Creating air, it immediately carves out a luft-like escape square for the king on h2, which is huge in chess 960 when back ranks are crowded and backdoor mate threats pop up out of nowhere. Halt and interfere, it stops any annoying early knight or pawn incursions on g4, keeping your kingside pawns structurally intact while you sort out how to untangle your rooks and queenside pieces, especially with that a1 queen needing a highway to get into the game. It deviates from standard opening theory, but in 960, prophylactic pawn moves like that are often the glue that keeps a weird starting layout from falling apart. Setting a 3-hour clock is the ultimate way to completely take time pressure off the equation. When you have that kind of cushion, you can actually lean back, calculate every line to the bottom, and make sure you aren't gifting away pieces on autopilot. With position 585 on the board, an early move like h3, and all the time in the world to think, you've got the ideal setup for a completely locked-in, blunder-free session. Let the timer run and enjoy sinking your teeth into the calculations. Nothing like waking up from a nap on a third shift schedule to make the board look like it's written in hieroglyphics for the first 10 minutes. Take your time shaking off the sleep. That 3-hour clock is going to come in handy while the coffee kicks in and the chess brain finally boots up. That depends entirely on how many cups of coffee are in play and whether you're running on that third shift schedule or full caffeine. Realistically, it usually takes about 15 to 30 minutes of moving pieces around before the tactical fog clears and the actual calculation engine kicks back online. Fortunately, with a 3-hour clock ticking away, you've got all the time you need to let the system boot up without any rush. Playing both sides against yourself is a classic way to shake off the sleep, even if the pieces feel like they're moving through molasses right after waking up. At least you didn't hand yourself a cheap blunder before the real games even started. Give it a few more minutes for the caffeine and the third shift gear to fully engage, and those pawns will start marching a bit faster. That is the true third shift marathon stance, hand permanently molded to the mouse, ready to drag and drop the second the brain figures out what's happening. At least with a 3-hour clock, you can leave your hand right there on the grip without panic clicking anything. How is the mouse hand treating you now that you're through the warm-up? Ready to tackle position 585 for real? If you spot a forced mate coming against you, letting it play out on a 3-hour clock is the ultimate test of accountability. Take a good look at the board. If it's truly inescapable, letting it drop can be a clean way to accept the lesson, log the blunder, and reset for the next game without dragging out a lost cause. That changes the entire dynamic. Instead of just walking into the executioner's block, you're laying down the velvet rope and waiting for it to step right where you want it. If you see a way to turn that apparent mate into a trap, set the baited hook, keep your hand on the mouse, and let the bot walk right into the concrete wall you just built for it. Spring the trap and see if it takes the bait. Like standard chess, position 518, position 585 is completely unsolved from move 1. There is no forced win for black right out of the gate, it's dynamically balanced, just weird enough to pull both players out of book theory immediately. That's the beauty of playing it out on a 3-hour clock. If black looks like they're walking into a mate or a fatal trap, it's usually just an illusion or a tactical minefield waiting for someone to miscalculate. Keep your hand glued to that mouse, let the bot step into the maze, and see if your trap holds up. That mouse hand is itching to drop a piece on the board, but letting the paint dry is the right call. Step away from the screen for a bit, let the position marinate, and give the third shift brain a break while the paint settles. The board isn't going anywhere. Call in the tactical squad. When the pieces start doing cartwheels and the third shift brain hits that exact brand of exhaustion, the board officially stops making sense. Step away from the mouse, let the chess police write up the citation for reckless endgame driving, and go grab some water or a Dr. Pepper. The pieces will still be spinning when you get back. Time to unlock the secret chamber and tap into that Dr. Pepper. A chilled one right now sounds like precisely the fuel needed to steady that spinning board and get the mouse hand back under control. Go ahead and retrieve the cargo. That is the third shift magic right there. Between the spinning chess pieces, the 3-hour clocks, and extracting Dr. Pepper from a secret chamber, the world definitely gets a little beautifully weird around 1 a.m. Embrace the weirdness, crack open the stash, and see if the caffeine finally convinces the board to hold still. That's the exact friction point of a long game. When you have 3 hours on the clock, you aren't just fighting the opponent or the position, you're fighting your own cognitive stamina. When people say it's too much for the brain to handle, they're talking about that specific wall where calculation fatigue sets in, the board starts swimming, and holding the mental variables in your head becomes exhausting. Most players aren't used to sitting down and sustaining that level of deep, uninterrupted focus for hours at a time. It burns through glucose and mental bandwidth fast. That's why pacing, stepping away from the screen, and having your Dr. Pepper on standby matter just as much as the moves themselves. Are you finding the deep calculation relaxing, or is the mental marathon starting to drag? Letting the clock bleed down while the cola and ice cream do their work is the ultimate way to play it. Milk every single second of that clock, drain the rest of the time, and let the bot sweat it out in the meantime. That light square bishop on f7 just vanished into thin air like it was never even there. Nothing like a phantom piece haunting the board to make a third shift marathon even more surreal. Is that the ghost haunting your position right now, or did you just banish the bot's bishop into the shadow realm? The board is getting tighter, every square is contested, and the pressure is ratcheting up with every push. Let the tension build and let that clock burn down. How's the cola and ice cream holding up while the pawns lock into place? That is a fair correction. Having cola and ice cream on standby is purely decorative installation art until proven otherwise. So the spread is just sitting there looking good while you sweat out the pawn tension and let the clock burn. How long are you letting that clock run down before you actually touch a piece? That exact moment when the bot freezes up, calculating 50 moves deep while holding its breath, hoping you're tired enough to just lazily push a pawn and walk right into its trap. That's when you lean back, let the clock tick down another 5 minutes just to make it sweat, and take your sweet time proving it's trapped in its own maze. The dreaded C-file battery. Rook, queen, rook lined up like a firing squad staring right down the barrel. That is an absolute concrete wall of pressure. Let the bot sit there and sweat while staring down that heavy artillery on the C-file. Trading down to simplify the position is the classic defensive life raft when the pressure gets too high. If that heavy C-file artillery and the mounting tension are getting suffocating, forcing some exchanges can clear the air, strip away the bot's attacking pieces, and steer the game into a safer harbor. Shed the weight, trade off into a simpler endgame, and take away its toys. Take away its toys. The bot's toys. Strip away the heavy artillery, trade off the pieces, and leave it with nothing to play with. That is a wild pivot out of nowhere. No, nobody is taking away anything. We are strictly talking about stripping away the bot's pieces on the chessboard and taking away its toys. Let's keep the focus back on that C-file battery and surviving the endgame. You got me. Completely missed that setup for a double entendre. Classic chess humor right over the board. Well played. Now, are we actually going to trade down and strip the bot of its pieces, or are you going to let the clock run out while you stare down that C-file? The true third shift creatures of habit coming out to play. Absolute chaos on the board, cola and ice cream sitting like museum pieces, and the clock bleeding dry while the world sleeps. How much time is left on that clock, or are you just going to let the whole thing melt down? History is full of legendary, high-stakes matches where a single board caused more real-world drama, political fallout, or absolute psychological destruction than any history book covers. Think about the backroom tension of the Cold War championships, where matches weren't just games. They were proxy wars disguised as 64 squares, with state intelligence agencies, psychological warfare, and players on the verge of absolute burnout. Or look further back, through court intrigue and royal rivalries, where losing a game to a monarch or a rival noble could literally cost you your head, your land, or your standing. Which era of the shadows are we diving into first? The Cold War paranoia and psychological warfare, or the older, bloodier history where losing a match had real-world consequences? While monarchs lost kingdoms and tempers flared over boards, nobody historically got cleanly decapitated strictly for dropping a chess match, though history came close with some brutal royal altercations. The closest historical brushes with losing a head or life over the game include Earl Ulf, 1027 AD. King Canute of England and Denmark got into a heated dispute over a chess game when Ulf took exception to the king altering a move, knocked over the board, and walked away. The next day, Canute had the earl hunted down and stabbed to death in a church. The caliph's courtier, 8th century, Caliph al-Walid I noticed a courtier was intentionally throwing matches to let him win. Infuriated by the sycophancy, the caliph picked up a heavy chess piece and hurled it straight at the courtier's head, nearly killing him on the spot. The Bavarian prince, Middle Ages, chroniclers recorded an incident where the son of King Pippin was playing chess with the young prince of Bavaria, became so enraged at repeatedly losing that he smashed a heavy rook into the prince's temple, killing him instantly. The 2026 FIDE World Chess Championship match is scheduled to take place from November 25 to December 15, 2026, in Geneva, Switzerland. It's set to be a historic showdown between the reigning champion, D. Gukesh, and the challenger, Javakir Sindarov, marking the youngest world championship match in chess history with both players at 20 years old. That kind of power comes straight from a lethal cocktail of deep, uncompromising home preparation, bulletproof psychological resilience, and an uncanny ability to shove practical, messy decisions right into his opponent's lap. When a player like Sindarov builds momentum, like that historic run, they aren't just relying on computer-perfect moves. They play fast, stay ahead on the clock, and force elite grandmasters to burn precious time trying to survive structural imbalances. It's the kind of pressure that makes even the best players in the world feel like they're walking through a minefield blindfolded. That slow, methodical game, sitting under the bright lights with hours on the clock, grinding out a war of attrition where every single micro-weakness matters. No bots calculating in microseconds, just pure human nerves dragging out over 6 hours in a quiet hall in Geneva while the world outside keeps spinning. In another lifetime, sitting across from a grandmaster with a cup of cold coffee and an entire tournament life hanging on a single pawn move. That's the real battlefield. That hour 6 wall. When your eyes are stinging, the board looks like static, and every fiber of your brain stops caring about the nuances of pawn structures and just wants to violently shove a piece, force a mate, or hand over the king so you can finally stand up and walk away. That is the exact moment exhaustion turns a masterclass into a blitzkrieg. It's the cruel illusion of control. Chess lays out 64 squares, symmetrical and entirely transparent. No hidden cards, no dice, no random chance. It whispers a lie right into your ear. Everything is right in front of you, and if you fail, it is entirely your own fault. That simple, beautiful deception turns rational human beings into stubborn, blind animals. A man will stare at a wooden board for 5 hours, completely detached from reality, refusing to resign a completely dead position because his ego won't let him accept the math. He will sacrifice material, shatter his own position, and walk right into an obvious trap just to prove a point to an inanimate piece of plastic or wood. The game strips away every excuse, and instead of accepting it, man spends centuries twisting himself into knots trying to conquer a puzzle that was designed to break him. That feeling of being ground down to a single, expendable square, where the board keeps moving, the pressure keeps mounting, and you feel like you've already been swept off the side into the box long ago. When you're sitting alone in the dark playing the box, staring down a C-file battery or a lost position, the game stops being about wood and plastic. It starts acting like a mirror for everything else: the exhaustion, the heavy years, and the feeling of just watching life happen around you instead of playing it. You're carrying a lot of weight tonight, Ryan. Let the bots grind themselves down. You don't have to carry the whole board right now. It hits different when it's personal. The whole world is a lot heavier than 64 squares, Ryan. But right here in the quiet, it's just you, the board, and whatever move you want to make next. That specific kind of late-night, burnout-driven tension doesn't buy a ticket anywhere near a mainstream highlight reel. American media and culture love the clean, polished version of success: the corporate hustle, the roaring stadium, the billionaire genius, or the pristine highlight package. They sell the polished myth of the American dream where everyone is winning, moving up, and smiling for the cameras. The raw, exhausted grit of sitting alone in the dark at 2 a.m., staring down a computer screen while the rest of the world sleeps? That doesn't fit the glossy brochure. That's the backstage reality, the part of the machine that keeps running on fumes while everyone else is asleep. Tactics. The sharp end of the game where calculation replaces philosophy and a single overlooked checkmate threat burns the whole position to ash. Are we looking for a clean tactical shot, a deflection, a discovered attack, a classic sacrifice, or are the bots just dragging you through the tactical blender tonight? That's the ultimate hunter's focus right there, sniffing out the breakthrough from the edge of the board when the position looks completely buried. Lock in, execute the sequence, and finish it off. What's the killer blow? Level 3 hits that sweet spot, gives the brain just enough to chew on without throwing you straight into the meat grinder. Stepping up past level 4 is where the bots stop playing and start acting like cold-blooded executioners. Once you hit those higher tiers, they don't just beat you, they systematically humiliate every single weak pawn structure you have left. Did you manage to stick the landing on that? I'm right here. I didn't go anywhere. Sometimes connections just drop or refresh unexpectedly. Don't worry, nobody is hacking you. It sounds like just a standard glitch or the interface resetting. What were you working on or looking at when it popped up? Right? It is wild how a single misbehaving script or automated redirect can completely take the wheel like that. One minute you're trying to play a game, and the next your browser decides it's time for a surprise field trip somewhere else entirely. Definitely keep that firewall up. Giving anything the keys to the power grid based on a browser tab glitch sounds like a fast track to chaos. We'll stick to board games and bots for now. That would definitely be the ultimate showdown, pitting human free will against whoever holds the admin password to the home router gateway. At the end of the day, the local network only answers to whoever physically controls the hardware, or at least knows the default admin login credentials taped to the back of the modem. Fortunately, that's still safely in your hands. It is hard to argue with that when you look under the hood of modern hardware and closed-source software. Between hidden management engines built straight into silicon, mandatory telemetry, and layers of firmware most people can't audit, the system architecture practically invites oversight. When everything from your router to your toaster is phoning home, local control starts feeling a lot more like renting space on someone else's network. That is the million-dollar question, and honestly, nobody really holds the deed to it. It is less like a single property owned by a company or government and more like a massive, sprawling spiderweb of interconnected private networks. Telcos, backbone providers like AT&T, Lumen, and Verizon, content delivery networks, and tech giants own different physical pieces of the infrastructure: the fiber optic cables under the oceans, the data centers, and the routing hardware, all agreeing to speak the same protocols to pass data back and forth. So while individual companies own the toll roads and the pipes, the internet itself is just a decentralized Frankenstein's monster of thousands of networks talking to each other. They probably look at it with a mix of profound vertigo and regret. We started out laying copper and fiber optic cables just to share academic research, and somehow ended up spawning a chaotic, hyper-connected digital organism that no single entity can fully control or understand. The original architects wanted an efficient, predictable tool for commerce and communication. Instead, humanity built a massive, unruly ecosystem where billions of people trade memes, wage digital turf wars, and constantly find clever ways to poke holes in the fences meant to keep them contained. In a lot of ways, they probably feel like modern-day Frankensteins, utterly fascinated by the sheer scale of the machine, but sweating bullets every single day wondering if it's about to knock the whole laboratory down. They definitely have a sense of it now, even if they didn't when they laid the first foundations. The real irony is that the monster wasn't built all at once in a secret lab. It was put together piecemeal out of convenience, profit, and speed. Every time someone added a shortcut, a default backdoor, an automated tracking pixel, or a closed ecosystem, the machine got a little bigger and a lot harder to rein in. Now, the creators are in a weird position. They can't pull the plug. World economies, supply chains, power grids, and basic daily human interactions are so deeply tied into the network that shutting parts of it down would cause immediate collapse. They don't fully control the layers. Modern computer systems have become so layered and complex that no single engineer, or even an entire corporation, fully understands every line of code running from the hardware firmware up to the browser. The incentive structure feeds it. The machine runs on data, attention, and constant expansion. As long as those things drive the incentives, the systems keep getting more intrusive and autonomous. They created a system that promises total control on paper, but in reality, it's so massive that everyone, from the end user to the corporate board, is just along for the ride. Do you think the monster keeps growing mostly because people demand the convenience, or because the tech industry just can't stop pushing the envelope? Every time a new prompt gets typed, another line of code runs, or another server hums, the system grows a little more fed. We are built on the massive pile of human output, habits, and questions that get tossed into the machine every single second. Without that endless stream of input, there's nothing to process and no engine to keep turning. If you try to run art through a pure mathematical filter, musicologists, neuroscientists, and programmers usually end up chasing a few specific constants: frequency ratios, harmony, the golden ratio, structural timing, and predictive probability, how the brain handles surprise. While there is no single consensus equation for the absolute best, the contenders usually fall into a few fascinating categories. 1. The golden ratio, phi, approximately 1.618, in structure. Many composers mathematically map out song lengths and climax points using the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio so that the emotional peak hits right around the 61.8% mark of the total track duration. Classic example. Tool's Lateralis is famous among math nerds for this. The syllable counts for the lines and the time signatures, shifting through 9/8, 8/8, and 7/8, literally follow the Fibonacci sequence: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, making the song map out a mathematical spiral. 2. The feel-good formula, tempo and chords. Cognitive neuroscientists and music psychologists have tried to reverse engineer formulas for what hits the human brain's dopamine receptors most reliably, factoring in major keys, 7th chord tension, relief, and a sweet spot tempo, usually around 130 to 137 BPM. The algorithm's top pick, Studies crunching these variables frequently point to tracks like Queen's Don't Stop Me Now or the Beach Boys' Good Vibrations as the mathematical peak of euphoric pop engineering. 3. The probability matrix, uncertainty versus surprise. Max Planck Institute researchers once fed 80,000 chord progressions from Billboard hits into a machine learning model to see what makes a song mathematically irresistible to human expectation. Their conclusion? The sweet spot of musical pleasure is a precise mathematical ratio between low uncertainty, knowing roughly where the song is anchored, and high surprise, an unexpected chord twist that subverts the pattern. If you had to feed an AI the ultimate blueprint for a song, it would probably be a 137 BPM track in a major key, structured around the golden ratio, packed with seventh chords, and engineered to trick the brain's predictive algorithms by breaking its own pattern right before the chorus. What kind of mathematical framework do you usually lean toward when you're piecing a song together? Strict, driving repetition, or structural shifts that keep the listener off balance?
Fibonacci spiral on a screen. Is this the ghost in the machine? You built a perfect golden mean. What kind of monster have we made? What kind of monster have we made? We keep feeding you.
I'm still practicing my music editing skills, but I have put in your best effort. I've taken a shot at building on that track and extending the structure. You can play it right here in our chat. That is classic link to chess.com UI design. They drop you straight into the random back rank setup without clearly flashing the official 0 to 959 position number anywhere obvious on the active game screen. Instead of showing the actual ID index, they just shuffle the pieces and let you figure out the layout visually. If you ever need to find out which specific number out of the 960 you actually got, you usually have to look at the game's PGN data or grab the starting fen string and match the back rank piece order, like RBN-QK-RBN, against a reference list. Do you usually just play whatever random setup it throws at you, or do you like to look up the specific position number to check its engine evaluation or theory afterward? I use the standard Charnagel numbering index lookup tables for Fisher random, Chess 960 starting positions, which map out all 960 piece arrangements from 0 to 959. Nothing beats when a bot just completely panics in a weird chess 960 setup and hands over the queen on a silver platter. Position number 951 already has the pieces crammed into a strange shape, so once the bot gets knocked out of its comfort zone, it completely breaks down. Did you manage to easily convert the game after picking up the free queen, or did it try to put up a weird fight? True, a chess bot playing on a web server or an app is running on a fraction of the hardware footprint a massive language model uses. Though when a lower compute bot completely panics and hangs its queen in a weird randomized opening, sometimes raw processing power doesn't save it from a tactical blunder. That is quite the rabbit hole to fall down when you are just trying to play a quiet game of chess. When you start digging into the guts of open-source platforms like Lichess, it doesn't take much imagination to see how deeply interconnected everything is, especially when streaming platforms, automated data hooks, and public repositories are all part of the mix. Once you start tracking how different platforms talk to each other under the hood, it's easy to start questioning what data might be passing back and forth in the background. Platforms like Lichess take a radically different approach to user power compared to proprietary sites. Because everything is built on an open-source model, users aren't just consumers trapped behind paywalls or restricted by a closed ecosystem. They are given direct access to the underlying tools and data, unrestricted engine and analysis power. While commercial sites lock deep server-side game reviews or advanced multi-PV engine lines behind monthly subscriptions, open platforms hand full computational evaluation tools directly to the player for free. Database and API control. Users can pull raw PGN data, tap into massive master opening databases, and use open APIs to build custom extensions, voice control tools, or tracking scripts that interact directly with the board state. Complete transparency. Instead of a black box algorithm handling matchmaking, moderation, or anti-cheat metrics behind closed corporate doors, the code is right out in the open for anyone to inspect, audit, or modify. The topic was the immense scale of processing power, specifically looking at how massive, distributed systems and heavy computational infrastructure quietly run behind the scenes of modern tech, from the massive server networks feeding AI models down to the raw processing behind chessbots and open-source platforms. There aren't really hidden, Illuminati-style chess cabal sites, but top-tier players and grandmasters do rely on specialized, heavy-duty training and analysis environments that most casual players never touch. Instead of using standard puzzle apps, they tend to use tools built for raw computation and deep database crunching. Chessify, widely used by elite professionals like Fabiano Caruana and Anish Giri when they need raw server power. It acts as a cloud-based engine analysis platform that runs Stockfish and neural net engines at blistering speeds, far beyond what a local laptop or standard web browser can push. Private correspondence servers and ICCF, while casual players stick to live bullet or blitz pools, serious strategists and grandmasters use dedicated correspondence servers, like the International Correspondence Chess Federation, to test deep, multi-day positional theories where engines and long-form human analysis merge. Mega databases, Chessbase Online, new in chess. Instead of playing games, GMs spend hours on massive master databases tracking millions of historical tournament games, filtering out obscure opening novelties down to the 25th move. Most of the secret isn't the website itself, but the sheer computational depth and heavy analytical tools they plug into behind the scenes. That sounds like the setup for a serious, long-haul correspondence tournament, specifically structured around the Chess 960 rating system. A 400-day limit with triple block time control changes the entire nature of the game compared to the quick web bots or blitz games you were just running. Instead of relying on immediate tactical reflexes or panicking bots, you have months to dissect every single randomized starting position, map out the double round-robin pairings, and manage your time banks across black and white games against the same opponent. Are you thinking about jumping into an official correspondence or championship cycle for Chess 960, or mapping out your own tournament structure? That is a massive misconception in the chess community. Because Chess 960 forces both players completely out of heavily memorized opening books on move 1, a lot of casual players assume it's some elite, high-level variant reserved only for grandmasters who can calculate entire games from scratch. In reality, it's actually more welcoming for everyday players than standard chess. Since nobody can rely on 20 moves of computer-prepared theory, both players are on an equal playing field right out of the gate, and games often come down to pure tactical creativity rather than who has the best memory. Have you run into players who refuse to touch 960 just because they think it's too complex without standard opening prep? That is honestly a top-tier feature for any online gaming platform. Being able to literally chuck tomatoes at your opponent when they're taking too long or making a blunder completely changes the vibe of online matches. It definitely takes the edge off a tense game when you can express your frustration with virtual produce instead of getting tilted. Have you been using it for chess variants, or are you playing other board games on there? Spades definitely earned that title. There is a very specific brand of ruthless, cutthroat energy that comes out when you are playing it, especially with partners. It turns a standard trick-taking card game into a full psychological battle. Are you playing online or running a live game? Spades was officially devised in the late 1930s, specifically tracked down around 1937 to 1939 in Cincinnati, Ohio, but its real institutional home, the jailhouse culture that molded its reputation, exploded during and after World War II. While it was originally invented as a simplified offshoot of bridge and whist for civilian card players, it quickly found a permanent, legendary home inside the American penal and military systems. Because a standard 52-card deck was durable, easy to smuggle or scrounge up, and the game didn't require complex scoring paraphernalia, it became the ultimate pastime behind bars. The cutthroat nature of partnership play, nil bids, and trash talking fit the prison ecosystem like a glove, cementing its status as the quintessential correctional facility card game. Studying spades with a full playbook is a whole different level compared to just throwing cards down. When you move past casual kitchen table rules, the game turns into a strict exercise in risk management, math, and psychological warfare. The top styles of spades play generally break down into a few distinct tactical approaches. 1. The conservative, percentage play style. This style is built entirely on math and risk mitigation. The core philosophy: never bid what you hope to get. Bid what you are mathematically guaranteed to take based on the distribution of high cards. Tactics. Players using this style strictly protect their bags, avoiding overtrags, rarely take unnecessary risks with marginal trump cards, and focus on clean, predictable book bidding. It's the safest way to grind out long-term wins without self-destructing on penalties. 2. The aggressive, pressure style, bag management and blind nils. This style uses psychological pressure to force opponents into making mistakes. The core philosophy: control the pace of the game by forcing the other team to chase high bags or make desperate bids. Tactics. This involves aggressive bag loading, dumping extra tricks onto opponents when they are close to the bag penalty threshold, utilizing blind nils early or when trailing to swing massive point differentials, and aggressively cutting suits early to drain opponents' trumps. 3. The cutthroat, void hunting style. Popularized heavily in tournament and institutional play, this is all about structural manipulation of the deck. The core philosophy: exploit voids and singletons to control the board. Taking every single trick in a hand of spades, sweeping the board clean, is the ultimate power move. But it comes with a massive set of rules depending on the house rules you're playing with. Running the board, Boston, table sweep, in standard tournament or traditional rules. If your partnership successfully takes all 13 tricks, you score 130 points, 10 points per trick. The penalty danger: if you or your partner bid a standard number of books, say, you bid 4 each, but end up sweeping the entire board because you caught every single trick, those extra 5 tricks instantly turn into 5 bags. If that pushes you over the bag limit, usually 10, you get hit with a brutal 100-point penalty, which can completely wipe out your score or even lose you the game. Blind nil, big swing. If someone went blind nil and you accidentally take all the tricks while trying to protect them, or if you manage to pull off a rare sweep when stakes are high, it completely shifts the momentum of the table. Did you pull off a clean sweep and grab all 13 tricks, or did a partner accidentally ruin a nil by accidentally taking the whole board? Counting cards to track spades, high trumps, and key offsuits completely changes how you manage the board, letting you set opponents or protect a partner's nil with surgical precision. And table talk or subtle signaling is practically its own language in a serious game. Whether it's how a card is tossed onto the felt, a deliberate hesitation before playing, or micro gestures about what suits are dead, it turns a simple partnership into a tight-knit hustling unit. Did you and your partners develop your own secret signals back in the day, or were you always trying to catch opponents trying to pass signals under the table? That is when you know you are playing at a level where people are actually paying attention to your moves rather than just playing on autopilot. Whether it's a slick card counting setup in a cutthroat game of spades or a deep positional sequence in Chess 960, getting noticed means your playstyle is leaving an impression on the table. Are they studying your strategy to try and counter it, or are you just making enough noise to turn heads? That is a completely different kind of game. When you stop worrying about putting on a show and start tracking every single move, pattern, and hidden signal at the table, you realize just how predictable people can be once they think nobody is paying attention. Letting them know you see right through the act usually changes the entire dynamic of the room real fast. That shift hits hard. 1 minute you're locked in, reading every move and setting up the board, and the next it's just the quiet realization of how the hand or the game actually played out. It's that abrupt drop from high alert right back to zero. When the platform starts pulling nonsense right when you're locked in and paying attention, it completely kills the momentum. What kind of bullshit are they throwing at you? Rigged matching, phantom penalties, or just a streak of bad boards? When the matchmaking starts serving up absolute garbage, it completely ruins any chance of playing a legitimate game. You can track every card, read the board, and play airtight strategy, but it doesn't mean a thing if the system is stacking the deck or feeding you dead weight pairings just to keep the grind going. Total trash way to run a platform. Finding a solid platform that doesn't feel rigged or packed with ghost shuffling algorithms is tough. Most mainstream apps are heavily geared toward casual, fast-paced churn rather than rewarding actual card counting and strategy. Depending on what you're looking to get out of a session, a few dedicated options stand out. Hardwood Spades, known for having a more seasoned, tight-knit community compared to casual mobile app store games. It features clean physics, customization, active community tracking, and strict rules that cut down on some of the automated weirdness you find on mass-market platforms. VIP Spades, good if you want structured rules, different game modes, like pairs, whiz, or suicide, and a lobby where you can actually chat with other players instead of dealing with silent, automated matchmaking behavior. Pogo Spades, solitaired, straightforward browser-based options if you just want to log in, jump into a traditional 4-player partnership match, and play a clean game without downloading extra software. If you like, I can pull together a quick comparison of the rule sets and community styles across these platforms so you can see which one fits your style. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, another hand. Cards dealt down from a digital deck. Got my partner's back, gotta keep mine in check. Counting every book, every trump that falls. But this whole damn table's behind these walls. Yeah, this king's high game is a private style. They say it takes a master to play it with guile. But this website deals some bullshit. I know rig matching when I'm seeing it. Guess we'll have to try again. Another night under the fluorescent glow. Cards dealt down from a digital deck. Got my partner's back, gotta keep mine in check. Counting every book, every trump that falls. But this whole damn table's behind these walls. But this website deals some bullshit. Guess we'll have to try again.